So these categories are going to go, and this is the story in a sense. So here we've got this problem. It's hyperpotential persistence and possibility. Underlying dimensions, complexity, diversity, and locality. So we've got to the black box phenomenon, for instance, in the financial markets, where even the experts really don't know what to do. And you think of quantum physics and things where things are, it's a probabilistic world that we're living in, et cetera. Diversity is increased by experience diversity. So we've always had diverse people around the world, but now it's experience because people are combining into cities. The tipping point was a couple of years ago, more people in cities than outside cities, and now cities are just influenced. And it's not just diversity, it's interpretivity. I'm not sure what the word is, but it's, you know, anthropologists, other people, sociologists, writing about this for 40, 50 years, that we were in a reflexive age where more and more we're aware that we're subjectively enacting what we live. But in terms of trickling down to everyday experience and being aware of this, it's getting more and more complicated to get community people and nonprofit and profit and, you know, the dialogue sort of approach to problem solving, and realizing how different the subjective interpretations are in any context to get anything done. So we avoid that, do other things, but those ways don't work. We know that. That's that persistent problem. So increasing diversity, almost exponentially, because now you have mixed race people, mixed ethnic people. You have the leading, you know, things in literature are happening at the margins where people combine cultures. So it's not just diversity of what we've had, but diversity of people like Barack Obama that incorporate the diversity, and it's hyper, you know. And then locality, not just the local global thing, but I'm thinking of horizontalizing it, like inter-locality. That you can't just be thinking, well, what are we doing locally to affect climate change globally? But what are we doing locally and what is happening in 30 other cities like ours? In a very concrete sense, we should know what they're doing for ideas, for resource collaboration, for, you know, so it's an inter-locality mindset. That the problem is we have either local, global, we don't have a mixed. So underlying problems are complexity, diversity, and locality. So then what I say is, now let's look at how the world is designed and what are the ways to design the world to address these fundamental sort of dimensions that are the challenge. The old regime is a combination of profit, non-profit, faith sector, community groups, all the typical institutions today that provide governance, beyond government, including government. And so their responses to this, well, I go into detail on market forces, for instance, creating products and services. Well, it adds to complexity, it meets needs, but it creates all kinds of externalities that the market doesn't measure. So we can't rely on pure market forces to save the world because we don't have ways of accounting for that. Government policy is too generic at a top level, at a federal level. It can't be local and situated enough to make a difference, or it gets misinterpreted and it ends up, or gets stuck in Congress because people can't agree. So there's, policy making isn't going to be handled complexity, diversity, or locality issues the way it's designed. Same thing with foundations, and I could go into the different things of how they design programs. It ends up being like policymakers, generic programs that don't fit situated situations. Often these programs don't last because they don't work and people don't learn from each other because they haven't created the design system. I might have to go a little faster here, but the general idea is that the old regime, the regime of different sectors at this point all share this basic problem of problems that are too standardized, of being fractionally divided among themselves, even within themselves. Faith organizations don't collaborate, even within the same religion, much less nonprofits. They don't collaborate with each other because they're all getting funding from the same foundations or government agencies. So they vie with each other to serve the same market, or you know, business and community groups that have very different ideologies. And then hierarchicalness of locality. Either we solve the problem locally, or we have these big global things. But there's not a mix of seeing transverses and, you know, the ways of being interlocal as a way of addressing issues. Okay. So you can see that the problems are aligned with the old regime. Why does the old regime not work? And I put it in the context of these problems. It's a gross simplification of things, but I'm trying to get at 60% of the thing that would give us a gestalt of what is world design today against what it needs to address as a basis for saying how would we design the world to address those fundamental challenges that we have: complexity, diversity, and locality. So that's the story. The problem, you meet this problem, you go off on the journey, you realize the old regime doesn't work, so now you have to go off into the world, wander, and find a new way to design the world. And so the basic principles of the new